he said that Premier League referees are managing the championship final.
Yes.
So is it showing that the quality of the championship final referee or the championship referees are low, that they do not or they cannot handle the pressure of a final, or what is it?
Well, I'll tell you what it is. The funding of the PGMOL, the people who pay the 20 million, because the budget for the PGMOL is 20 million pounds. That's a substantial amount of money. And that money comes from the Football League, the Premier League, right, and the Football Association. It's not a third each, it's a variable percentage. When the PGMOL was formed, part of the discussion was that, you know, the Football League had Division 1, 2, 3 and 4, and the Football League had the full ownership of the referees. So they could select from 56 referees the ones that are going to referee either their playoffs or important games. And when the PGMOL was formed, the first thing was that the championship playoff final would ideally be done by a referee who was in top form, and ideally one of the professional referees. And the English Football League said, look, it's an important game to us. All those games are important to us. We want the best referees in this country to referee. And so there was a lot of debate. And the outcome was that there was an agreement by a board of directors, the PGMOL. This is not Mike Riley's decision. This is the PGMOL board, if you like, agreeing the principle that at the final of the playoffs, and particularly the championship playoff, where those two teams are playing to go to the Premier League, that will be conducted by a Premier League referee. It's not a reflection on the quality of the championship referees. But one of the, if you like, problems that we have in England is that we've got an aging group of referees, you know, more towards 50 than 30. And the problem around that isn't about the competence levels of the younger people coming through. It's about not, if you like, managing perhaps more effectively that group of referees. Because I would say, and I have done, and it's a difficult decision. I've said, you've been on this list for X months or X years, and sadly your form has disappeared. You're no longer the referee that we once saw. I'm going to move you on. This is no different. A football manager in a club looks at his team at the end of the season and says, well, you've not fulfilled the expectations, so you're moving on. One of the difficulties that the PGMOL has is that the country's laws, age legislation, no longer allows you to take the view of FIFA. FIFA say, generally, at 45, you retire as an international referee. On the odd occasion, they will extend that for 1 year, but rarely. I think in Germany, amazingly, they still operate that, generally 45. In England, we can't do that. With EEC regulations that operate at the moment, age legislation does not permit you to remove somebody from employment given their age. So it's about competence and fitness. And the referees, because they're professional, pass the fitness test with ease. And there lies the problem. So what you then have to do is have a very robust performance analysis system. And you then have to get down to what are key match incidents. You know, is it a goal? Is it not a goal? Is it a penalty? Is it not a penalty? Is it a red card? Is it not a red card? Those major decisions that influence the outcome of the game. And that's when you've got to say, right, okay, how many have you had in the season as a referee? How many performances below par do we think as a management team? And therefore, the removal should take place, or you should say, right, okay, we're downgrading you. We're you know, there isn't at this moment in time the level of accountability that I adopted and I introduced into the PGMOL. And there are some referees. Well, if you're the top tier referees of Oliver, Atkinson, Taylor, and you've had 31, 32 games, and there are some on that list that have been on that list for some time, and they've only had 15, 16. What does that tell you? It says, as the boss, you can't trust that individual, and what you're doing is you're selecting what you consider to be the easy games. So let's name someone, because I don't pull punches. So you've got someone like Lee Mason, who's been on the list, probably the longest serving referee. And I think he's had 15, 16 games in the Premier League this year, half the amount. So my view is very clear. There are other referees that are clearly knocking on the door, wanting to come in, you know. And, you know, I've watched a guy called Jeff Eltringham in recent weeks have 2 or 3 excellent games. And I'm thinking he's good enough to be on the Premier League. So why isn't he given a chance? So at the beginning of the season, every year the PGMOL will sit there and go, yep, we're going to bring some fresh blood in. And here are the referees. And we don't know sometimes. And they've done that this year, and they've given them 1 game. You know, you cannot make a judgment on the competence level of somebody dealing with a Premier League game, right, on 1 game. That's like asking you to dance like John Travolta in Greece, and you do it, and they go, sorry, you're not good enough. You know, when you might have got the wrong shoes on. It just doesn't work that way. You know, you have to, you know, you might say 12 years. Most referees on the Premier League have done between 8 and 12 years apprenticeship. And that's about getting to understand tactics, understanding the players, applying the laws of the game, communication, dealing with the pressure, all those things, movement around the field of play, getting fit, mobile. And it takes time to develop that, interrelationships, interpersonal relationships with players. And all of a sudden you're saying, oh, by the way, what car do you drive? Yeah, a Morris Oxford, lovely car, fine. Tomorrow you're going to drive an F1. And the guy goes, well, I know the steering wheel, and I think the levers, but can I drive a car at 200 miles an hour? And so you have to bring them in, but you also have to coach them and mentor them. And that for me at the moment is not working as well as it could. You know, coaching, you know, if there's young referees listening to this, what they should do is this: get another referee that's older than them, that's more experienced than them, and say, do you mind helping me? If I ring you up, if I contact you over the internet and ask you a question about my game, will you give me some advice? Because that's what I did. I had a former assistant referee who used to go to games with me, sit in the car, and I'd come off some games thinking, I've done better than that. I really have done better than that. Sat in the car, disappointed with my own performance, and he has said, what's the matter with you? And I've gone, disappointed, I've done better. And he goes, no, it looked okay. Everybody was happy. And then a few days later, you get an assessment and he gives you 9 out of 10. But that's, most sports people will tell you that they're always looking for improvement. They're always looking for improvement. So if you're Sachin Tendulkar as a cricketer, every time he played, the world's best, every time he played, and say he missed a shot, he would practice that before the next ball, like most cricketers do. Refereeing is no different. If you have a problem, you've got to try and understand why that problem was created and how you deal with it in the future. And this is part of my role now. It's part of the role is to coach, develop, and improve the standard of officiating around the world. And you achieve that through good communication and passing on those skill sets, you know, those experiences, giving confidence, you know. I mean, if you're sat now as a Premier League referee this week in England, and tomorrow is the FA Cup final, that game that we talked about, right? And if you've not had it before, the tradition in England is you only get it once. Now, I was fortunate, I had it twice, but I don't count it as twice. It's once. It's one game played over two matches. So what you've got is, if you're, for example, if you're Lee Mason, if you're Craig Pawson, if you're Paul Tierney, competent referee Paul Tierney and Pawson, if you think, they're probably going, well, this season, him have had the final, so it's down to a small group of select Group 1 referees. I'm going to work hard to secure it. And then somebody tells you at the end of the season, you're not selected, we're using a guy who had it a few years ago. Anthony Taylor's going to referee for the second time. Nothing wrong with Anthony Taylor as a referee. He's one of our top referees. But he's getting the FA Cup final twice. That's the first time that's happened since 1901. So you asked me a sensible question. Why does Premier League referees referee the Championship playoff final? I answered you in detail. The politics, the business aspect of it, and the requirements of the Football League to have the best referee on their key game of the season. The excuse that the Football Association in England gave for the appointment of Anthony Taylor was shocking, because it said, we're selecting Anthony Taylor again because obviously in these difficult circumstances, the family of the referee and friends are unable to attend Wembley to watch the referee a football match. And I just couldn't believe what I was reading, because when I was amateur, I was professional. I had a choice. Do I referee a football match in New Zealand as an international referee carrying a white badge, or do I actually say, no, I've got to go to work? I had to make a sacrifice. And when I worked hard to get the introduction of the PGMOL, the formation of the PGMOL, which is not easy, and said all the benefits, professional approach, improved fitness, better care in terms of sports psychology, all the things that you want to do, that, by the way, they'll go to a hotel, they'll stay overnight, they'll prepare better, they'll be driven to the ground and back, all those sort of things that we introduced, nutritional advice and everything. And now what we've done is we've gone back to the days when I was a referee, when, like, oh, by the way, your family's invited. You know? So we make the choice, we break tradition, because the referee, Anthony Taylor, can't take his wife, or whoever else they had in mind can't take his wife to a football match. And I'm just like, I mean, I've written in the Telegraph today, this has nothing to do with the referee and the referee's competence. Taylor is a good referee. He's an outstanding referee, right? He makes errors, like most people do. They're human beings. I'm not having a go at him. I'm having a go at the administrators for making what I consider to be a poor, thought-through decision. Of course, let me tell you this, the PGMOL do not appoint the FA Cup final referee. the cup final referee is appointed by the referees committee of the Football Association. And the guy who heads that is former referee David Ellery, who was an amateur referee in a professional game. He refereed on the Premier League. But you see, you can't, we're in a business environment here. We're talking about millions of pounds. We're talking about the most prestigious cup tie in the world because of tradition and history. And we give it Anthony Taylor for a second time. And by the way, Mr. Taylor, you can't bring your family. They better watch on television. Well, they could have done that with Craig Pawson. They could have done that with Paul Tierney. Tierney, for me, has been an outstanding referee this season. And if I'm in his position, see, what you have to understand is I've got colleagues who were outstanding referees. Some of you might remember people like Mark Halsey as an international referee of great repute in England, right? And a Premier League referee who I was his boss. And I could put him on any game. I had no problems putting him on any game. But the FA wouldn't select him for the FA Cup final. So Mark Halsey stands around now coaching player referees and doing things with me. And he never had the cup final. So I'm going on a bit, but I'm trying to give you a background in terms of why I've criticised the appointment, not for the individual. The tradition has been broken, and a number of referees will be disappointed because if you'd said to them, well, you've got a choice of reffing the final, but you can't take the family, do you think they would have said no?